We're back with another exciting episode of Snap Mafia, this week with Rajan Vaish. He's done some incredible things on the AR and VR side at Snap, which we'll get into, but he's now the co-founder and CEO of Easel, which is an AI-powered app that lets users create scenes with AI, build avatars, and talk with friends directly within iMessage. Rajan, we're super excited to have you here today. Would love to just jump right in and get into your background. You've done a ton of interesting stuff, starting from your bachelor's in computer science, you did a master's, a PhD, and then you've done a few cool things since then. So let's talk about that and just hear about your journey to where you are now with Easel.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Daniel and James. It's been a pleasure. I've been following your podcast for a while now, and really wanted to chat at some point. So my journey has been quite interesting in the sense of like I did my undergrad in India about 15 years ago, and I joined Accenture Technology Labs to work on really like exciting researchy stuff. Like I was fascinated by the research side of computer science. While working as an undergrad, however, with just like an undergrad degree, I felt very constrained by all the possibilities that I could, engage in. So when I saw my colleagues writing patents, so like getting patents and publishing papers, I really got fascinated by that side of the world. And I got interested in a field called accessibility. Like in particular for me, it was visually impaired folks. How can we enable them to use technology in any way they want? And so I started working on accessibility research and applied for PhD programs. This was like 2010, and then got into my PhD program in 2011. So I came to the US. I was very fascinated by this area, and after like working for a while in accessibility, I got into crowdsourcing. I almost felt that one way to solve the challenges of society is if we can allow people to mobilize in different ways and solve like hard problems. And my style of like crowdsourcing was not mechanical Turk crowdsourcing, which is very common, where you give like tasks to like folks and they do micro tasks like labeling images or kind of annotating data. What I was trying to work on was, can we imagine a world where we can let people do complex tasks like academic level research, for example? And so I spent a lot of my time during my PhD working on mobilizing the citizen crowd to do very complex tasks. So I launched this project called Stanford Crowd Research Initiative, where people around the world were allowed to do research. It was kind of like that era when MOOCs were very popular. Coursera, Udacity, and like many of these platforms were prominent. Everybody was trying to teach different kind of courses. And I wondered like, okay, so we can scale education, we can scale teaching these courses. What about getting people to do actual research? And so this project was born. We allowed anyone in the world to sign up for this. 1,500 people signed up from all the continents except Antarctica with zero filters, which means like we never checked for like their research background. We never checked whether they are like computer science students or not. As long as they were interested in academic research, we let them in. And we kind of created this experience for them where they could pick between 3 research projects. So there was a computer science within computer science. So there was data science, computer vision, and human-computer interaction projects led by professors at Stanford, Cornell, and University of California. And these students were paired up with them, and they started working on different research projects. And the goal was, how do we let them get this academic experience while a professor only spends the same amount of time as they would do with their single PhD student? So there was a lot of orchestration required to make that happen, and that was part of my research. Like, how do we organize these kind of like collaborative systems? And so a lot of students who worked on these projects, they wrote papers, they built these systems, they did research, and a lot of these papers got published. In some scenarios, we had 20 plus authors from these publications. And yeah, like then later when they were actually interested in grad school, we started writing them letter of recommendations to support them in their career mobility. The top student from one of the programs ended up going to MIT for his PhD program. Some students went to Stanford for like masters, while some went to Berkeley, Cornell, and other universities. So it was a very interesting experience in terms of like getting supporting career mobility while also answering the hard question of like, can we get crowd, or like, can we get people around the world to do solve hard academic problems. And after that, like as a follow-up, we launched like another project called Stanford Crowd course, where we wanted to get students to make videos, because reading papers was quite boring for a lot of undergrads. And so can we make videos to educate them and watch it in like a short format. Back then, short format was 10 minutes. Today, the short format is 10 seconds. This was YouTube Prime era, and so these students like created 10-minute long videos on different papers. So I was like very much in the mode of like academia, and I was strongly considering becoming a faculty at a university after that. But interestingly, one day I got an email from David Salson, who's like the head of research at Snap, because I had spoken to him in like at multiple occasions, etc. And he was like, "Hey, like we just like set up this lab here. Would you like to come or interview us?" And I was like, "Okay," So I came down to LA, interviewed them, and it was amazing. I, for the first time, met Bobby Murphy, who was in the interview panel. Had a lot of fun, like chatting with the team. And a few days later, I got an offer, and I was like, okay, this is such a cool opportunity, like where the goal was to kind of like think about the future of communication. How will people connect in the next era when like technology is getting better, um, and and so like I decided to move down to LA to join Snap. So that's been like kind of like my quick journey until Snap.
That's awesome, Rajan. I mean, that's an amazing journey. I think for myself and for listeners, like going back a little bit, like can you help distill down when you say you wanted to go into research and then you did research during your postdoctorate and then you came in and as part of the research group at Snap, like what does that mean? Both in the academic setting and then like coming into a private revenue generating for profit company like Snap, like what does research mean in these different scenarios?
Yeah, on a very high level, research is a process of like answering the unknowns, or like where you don't know what the end output would be. So, for example, let's say if we are building like an email system, right? Like we know that like how email systems are like built. We know the mechanics of it. There are no unknowns. The unknowns are, let's say, once an email system has been built, how will people react if there was a live component to emails? If you could see who's online, will that change the behavior of like how people respond to different people at different times? Now, like from known, we switch to unknown, right? Like, and that's the research aspect there. The known was that for like let's take the example of like Stanford Cloud Research Initiative. Was the known was that yes, people will be interested in like doing research. Professors will be interested in like supporting students to do research. But how? How will we like coordinate like at scale where like professors not gonna be spending more time than they would do with their like single PhD student? All these unknowns is where like research gets very exciting, because now we're trying to uncover the unknowns, and we don't know whether this will be successful or even like not successful. It could be a complete failure. But the process of like finding the answers to these questions, it requires research, and that's what I found very exciting. In the industry setup, the goals were different, but fundamentally also same. Like we knew that like what matters is like human connection. People are friends, want to stay in touch with each other. Friends are already like enjoying expressing themselves with each other on the smart glasses form factor, like using Snapchat. How will that translate on a new device that is unknown, right? Like it is possible that people will not enjoy it on a different form factor. That's fine. But we need to study that. We need to build systems to understand that. And the whole process of discovery and query and inquiry is what research is all about. That got me excited.
Okay, thanks for walking through that. So anyway, so you were about to tell us about your experience at Snap before I interrupted you. So let's get back to that.
At Snap, I for the first year I worked on several like crowdsourcing projects, which was a very seamless transition into like my work, thinking from like moderation stuff to content curation to whether we can make new crowd-based experiences on the main product. So they were like research projects, but right around that time, augmented reality was starting to become a bigger priority, and it was just fascinating to see what was possible in terms of like bringing people together using augmented reality. So I did like one of my first project was called Blocks, which kind of was aimed at understanding the fundamentals of collaboration using AR. What I mean by that is when we are working in augmented reality, like we often ask questions of like, what kind of like multiplayer experience can we create with AR? Could it be co-located? Are co-located experiences better or are remote experiences better? Are experiences that are tied to a geolocation better or like independent better? Are synchronous experiences better or like asynchronous experiences better? There are like all these questions that like are important when we are like making design decisions when it comes to AR applications. And so I wanted to like answer them like once and for all, kind of like, so we ran like a very extensive study, and like we built a product around it called Blocks, where people could come and like build Lego like structures together. And we learned a ton, and that influenced the rest of the kind of like my work on AR. A few years later, Snap launched a collaboration with Lego, with kind of I believe like a lot of concepts that we learned through that project. And from that experience, like we started working on not just like phone as a form factor, but like glasses as a form factor. Like what could we do with like AR on smart glasses? Something that was very exciting to me with like smart glasses was that this form factor, the phone form factor, is why we have Snapchats of today. Once we'll have smart glasses, what kind of new Snapchats will we see on that form factor, and like how will Snapchat evolve on that form factor, especially when you have a camera that can see anytime, you have a screen that can project anytime, you have a computer that can sense anytime, and all of these things, all of these components are sitting right next to our most essential senses like eyes, ears, mouth, in a hands-free format. I believe that it unlocks a whole lot of like opportunities. Things that were not possible on phone will now be possible on glasses. So we built a lot of projects on spectacles and the smart glasses form factor.
And, I think from, maybe I'm just kind of curious from maybe like the research community's point of view, what is the perception of Snap in terms of like, how they push the boundaries and like sort of the innovation that took place there? Like when you told your friends of Stanford that you were going to Snap, were they like, what are you doing, moving down to LA? Or they're like, no, I get it. Like these guys are onto something.
People who were not familiar with Snapchat, they definitely were like, wait, why? Why are you doing that? I had to like actually show them like how Snapchat works and like how technology is embedded. Like what seems like a fun experience. There's so much science going on behind the scenes. Once they like acknowledged it and they felt like like there's a lot of tech there. It's not just like a picture sending messaging app. Like there's so much more to it. I think like for some it needed some education. For some who were already like say in like computer graphics field, right, or computer vision field, I think they were more in tune with like what Snap is doing, because Snap I think was publishing some papers. Like there were like researchers at Snap like were publishing papers, so or had like collaboration with professors. But in general, like I think Snap had a very very positive perception that like it's a very innovative company. In the sense of the new formats that it had shown to the world or introduced to the world, I think like people definitely appreciated that. Not everybody was aware because of the target demographic. Most of my friends like are professors, and so they were not like actual users of Snapchat. But at conferences, I would go and like I would show them, and they were like, "Whoa! Like it can do this." One of the features that nobody talks about or like did not talk about, but created a lot of like wow factor was Snap Map actually. They were like, whoa, you can see this, like you can do that, and you can see what's happening around the world. All of that experience created like a lot of wow factor because everybody's used to see lenses on ads and everything. They did not see the map, but like there's so much science and like research behind like the like motivations behind like why people are gonna share content publicly on Snapchat. So there's a lot of like positive perception, and we even wrote a paper in my second year at Snap on like why people share publicly on Snapchat. Like there was this feature called Our Story, right? So why do people even share on Our Story, and what can motivate people to share more so that our Snap Map is more richer?
And I'm curious, like that in particular, the science of behavior behind why people are sharing on Our Story and Snap, but like, does that research translate to at all to other platforms? So obviously Facebook and Reels, or Instagram and Reels, TikTok certainly. Like, what are the cross learnings across those? And then where are there differences where, like, if you were at TikTok, your research might differ?
Yeah, no, totally. Like, so we drew inspiration from like other platforms first, like Reddit, Yelp. Why do people leave reviews on Yelp? What are they getting out of it? What is their motivation? Why are people spending time like writing articles on Wikipedia? What are they getting out of it? They don't have to. They're not like, there's no monetary incentive, for example, when you write something on Wikipedia. But why are people even doing that? And it came down to a lot of like altruistic, intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. Altruistic in the sense of like doing something good for the world. Intrinsic just because it gives you a lot of joy to do that. And extrinsic was around some form of like benefit. For example, on Yelp, when people share their reviews, they get a specific, they get invited to specific events, and that was exciting to them. And so a lot of these learnings we did share with like product design team at Snap, and like how we can incentivize people to do share more using altruistic, intrinsic, and extrinsic motivations. And I think like fundamentally it translates to every platform. Like there's a reason why people share on TikTok today, because when you share on TikTok, like there's definitely an intrinsic motivation because you enjoy posting on TikTok, but then there's extrinsic motivation that like if you become famous there, then you can get brand deals, you can like make more money. And so there's extrinsic motivation, but purely extrinsic motivation generally doesn't lead to like sharing behavior, because you cannot force someone to do something if they're not excited or interested in something. So there has to be an intrinsic desire. And that's why to a certain level like gamification features fail on many platforms, because that's what, like, for example, like Duolingo has, why does gamification work on Duolingo so well? Because there's an intrinsic desire to learn a new language, and then extrinsic motivations of like to allow you to track that helps you. So you're like, okay, I've like finished like 50-day streak, etc. So that's like extrinsic motivation in play. But if somebody was not even intrinsically motivated to do that, no matter how many credits you'll give or like how many streaks kind of like you'll set, we cannot force someone to like use Duolingo to learn a new language. So it's a combination of like different motivations and how they play out. And I think like different platforms have different levels of, they kind of like pull these levers of like different levels of motivation.
It's interesting, I guess given that you were like in academia and then you went to Snap, how did you end up deciding that you were going to kind of jump ship and go fully onto now running Easel? That's like definitely like, I feel like running a company is like just a whole different mind space than having kind of probably more of like a research mindset.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to hear kind of how you got to that point, and then obviously love for people to if you could explain a little bit about Easel and what you're building there.
Yeah, it is different, but also similar in many ways. So I have spent like 10 plus years in academia slash academic world. So I'm very familiar with that world. I know the ins and outs of that in some ways. And having worked at like industry research lab, I also know that world. So there was a motivation and interest in like trying something new that is going to challenge me, and that's something I don't have spent a lot of time working on. At the same time, I think like Snap Research was a very special place. It was kind of like an incubator where we would build new products, we would ship something, we would test things, we would launch stuff. So it was kind of like we were working on like different startup ideas pretty constantly, and so that brought a lot of joy. So I felt like, like if I continue doing this kind of work, it'll be a lot of fun. But at the same time, because I was so familiar with the academic world and I had experienced a larger company, I really wanted to try something that I have never tried before. But at the same time, what interests me is discovering the unknown, solving like problems that you don't know the answers of. And that you could do that in a startup environment, like if you're working on like hard problems, like where we don't know the answer. Like if it was, let's say, if it was like let's build like a books shopping platform. I don't think like it has that many unknowns because they are like successful products in that space and you can learn and you can iterate. But trying something apps like very different, very fresh, requires that level of like inquiry. That was like so even when I was thinking of like doing a startup, I wanted to do a startup in a space that had similar level of like intellectual inquiry scope that that will make me feel challenged, and to solve the unknowns.
And so, Rajan, what is Easel?
Yeah, so Easel is an AI first visual messaging experience that is built directly inside iMessage. What that means is instead of taking a picture, you are generating a picture of yourself with or of your friends, and sending it on iMessage. So since in the last decade there has been like a successful product that has built like a very complex like social graph, and so we wanted to bypass that problem by building on iMessage, but at the same time there were so many limitations with how people send pictures. They're like not everybody. First of all, not everybody's comfortable sharing selfies. There's a big demographic of people who are shy or they're not comfortable. There's a barrier to entry when it comes to sharing selfies. How can we enable them to lower that barrier? The second aspect is when people are kind of like trying to express something, there's always like something that is in your mind, like a mental image. How do you convey that? Not everything, again, can be conveyed with just a real picture. What I mean by that is, let's say you're like working late at night, you're tired, and you want to send the feeling of that you're burning midnight lamp and you're like everything is stressful. I don't think like you can create a scenario in your room to like send that, but with AI you can finally like unlock that kind of experience that you know Rajan like with messy hair, paper flying around, burning midnight lamp, and then you send that image of yours, that avatar of yours, to your friends, and you're like, oh, okay, Rajan is really tired. Like he's working on like a lot of things. So it really like supercharges that form of expression. And then on top of that, when anybody sends these messages, even if they don't have Easel installed, they can view it. But if they have Easel installed, then they can tap to remix the same scene and they can see themselves in a similar scenario. It's not like a copy paste. The beauty of AI is that every generation is special, it's unique. So they can see themselves in a similar scenario, but like a different image. And then we have a multiplayer experience where friends can add each other. and create scenes of themselves together or of just that particular person. And we are like very careful in terms of like how do we create multiplayer experiences, because the moment you give access to a friend to create a scene of yourself, like, they can do whatever, right? And having seen the history of like how social experiences can be misused, we put a lot of thought into it. So number one, it's a key based approach. So the two parties first exchange keys to enable that like handshake movement. After that, any scene that a person creates, the other person has full visibility into what is being created. So you can keep seeing it on your easel, like, okay, James is creating the scene of me. Okay, now he's doing that. Now he's doing that. So you have like full visibility over that. And finally, we have a mutual deletion policy. So it's not that like a person can create a scene of you or with you, screenshot and delete. Even after they delete, the other person has visibility into like what was deleted, so that it cannot be misused. And of course, like folks can always revoke keys. So we kind of created this whole experience with user safety, user control in mind, because as AI is evolving, there are people who are bullish on AI, but there are people who are also skeptical about AI. So like the more comfort we can bring early on, I think it'll have a positive experience on users. So that's, in summary, that's Easel. It's a visual form of expression that allows you to see yourself in any scenarios or experiences.
And for, I think everyone's familiar with sort of AI, but not a lot of people have like developed their own models and, have done kind of the level that you guys are doing. Like, how has that experience been? Like, where are we kind of, I guess, in sort of the cycle? I know that like kind of like the common refrain is like, it's the worst it's ever going to be, but like, how has it evolved even in like the, short amount of time you're working on Easel, and like, where do you see this going? Like, do you envision that at some point, like you're going to be like pretty soon, a year from now, are we making videos of like me and Daniel, like, where is this going to end up?
Yeah, I feel like technology is like constantly improving. And as technology is improving, design decisions are changing constantly. Things that were not possible a year ago are finally possible in many sense. And I think like things that we feel are like harder, like we're not doing today, will be possible like a year later, or maybe in 6 months. And the way we are building Easel is we have a vision. We have a vision of like how communication will be 5 to 10 years from now, let's say. A world where people are able to express themselves in any way through capture or create, meaning like you're on a walk and you're seeing these are like the North Star experiences that you like kind of like see on in many demos. But the way I feel the world will function in terms of like communication is by bringing all of it together. You're on a walk, you see like a statue, you like capture that statue, send it to your friends in AR, or it's James's birthday, and so you kind of send a Mickey Mouse shaped cake to James on his birthday, because Mickey Mouse is his favorite cartoon character. How do we take that, because the technology for that does not exist, and neither does user behavior around anything AR is still like very much face based. How do we like take what is possible today while latching onto an existing user behavior is how we're kind of like building this. And there is user behavior around this. 83% US teens are on iMessage. It's America's largest social network. There's 250 million Bitmojis are sent every single day. So there's a user behavior on that. And so how do we latch onto like an existing user behavior to like kind of create this experience is what we're excited about. But more importantly, how we're um, how we're leveraging technology is by constantly improving our models. And you're right, like maybe in a year, like when the right now video takes a lot of time, all this video stuff that we see are very kind of like either edited or very very handpicked, all the like demo videos or trailers that we see today. I'm hoping that like in 6 months or a year, it won't be the case. Things will still improve, like still will improve, and they'll be fast enough that right now it's static scenes, but like in the future, it won't be surprising to see videos of of friends together in different scenarios.
Where are you guys as far as traction? Like how much have you raised? How big's the team? How where are you in the cycle of bringing user on and starting to develop some of those habits that you just talked about?
Yeah, so we raised like 2.65 last year from Unusual Ventures, F7 Ventures, and Corazon Capital. These are folks, ex Meta execs, ex CEO of Match Group, and uh, founder of Nextdoor, and some Stanford professors as angels. Since then, like we have been like constantly building. We're a small team, 5 folks, some backend engineering help, design, and AI engineering, and we are just getting started. So we just like had our TechCrunch article, which was a launching point for us. So we're very early in the process of user growth, but we're just like getting started in that direction.
And how has been, the thesis around launching kind of, solely for iMessage so far? Is that starting to prove out? Do you feel like, just like having to, as you mentioned, like not have to build your own social graph is like such a huge advantage?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best advantages of like one of the big unlocks has been to enable like remixing while you're like chatting with your friends. It's extremely powerful in a group chat setup, when you have like multiple friends, especially. So you send like a message, and we have seen like once one friend sends something, then others start remixing, and then they with multiplayer, then they start adding others in the same scene. So let's say it's like I send you like hi from Hawaii, and then James remixes says hi from Hawaii, and then Daniel is like James and Daniel in the same scene saying hi from Hawaii, and so like everybody like starts remixing, like so one person's initiation almost like converts everybody else in the same group chat. That has been a good unlock for us whenever like we kind of like see this iMessage experience. Um, and of course, like it enables almost like as you're like chatting, it kind of like uh, allows for that seamless integration, in the sense of if I want to say like, hey, I'm like running late, I don't have to generate something somewhere else, so like come to the iMessage to just say like, hey, I'm running late, and like creating a scene of myself like running frantically. So while I'm like chatting, I can create that, send it to my friends, and then they can like, oh, thumbs up, or like they do haha emoji, etc. So um, it kind of like blends pretty seamlessly there.
As a researcher, have you found anything even in this short period since launch that surprised you with how people are using it or adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I thought like that a lot of like use cases will be around emojis, like how people want to say like normal things, like hi, bye, love you, etc. One of our users, she had like a really interesting insight. She said that Easel has made her more aware of her surroundings, her context, as well as different events. So, things like MLK Day, she would really like not think too much about it, but because she got like a notification from Easel that like reflecting on a pool in Washington D.C., etc., like she was like, oh yeah, like it's MLK Day, and so gave her more presence in that situation. Or she was like, oh, I'm eating pasta right now, and she's like, like how will I show that to my friends? And so then she started like creating like different scenes of like her pasta eating experience, and she started like documenting her life in that particular format. And so we're starting to see interesting use cases, not just around expression, but expression or imagination, but also documentation, and of like how your life is in AI kind of angle. And because of that, like she's just more aware of her surroundings, the context she is in, and the different holidays, and things like that. So that's been like pretty interesting. I thought like, I was not thinking about it from that perspective, but it was a very interesting finding. On that note, a user behavior, like a user change that I've had like personally, is I have become much more like, I've been able to like share more publicly like my images. I feel like the barrier is lower. Or if I'm watching a movie, I'm almost like always now trying to create a scene from a movie into like what I'm trying to in AI. So if I'm watching Jurassic Park, like I'll create like a scene of me and my wife being chased by dinosaurs, or like on 4th of May, Star Wars scene. And even like we were watching like this movie of like the, shot in like Australia, and I was like, oh, what would it be like, if we were in Australia? And so like, and just like completely off topic, something that we have like observed is, this is totally anecdotal, but our son, who is 4 years old, like he loves Easel. He's like, can I have like my mommy and daddy? Like he keeps giving me prompts of like, can you create a scene of mommy, daddy, and like surrounded by kangaroos, or like you're doing this, you're doing that. So it's just like a fun thing for him, like as a playful experience. Something like it's not designed for it, but just cool to see it playing these kind of roles.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know it's hard to predict just given how fast all this technology is moving, but like, where do you think Easel is like 2 years from now, or like, where do you want it to be? Or, are you just taking it one, one, one sprint at a time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I want, as technology is evolving, I feel like the vision of Easel to be agnostic to the form factor, formats, and devices. Something that is not just like tied to, let's say, phones, or in terms of like format, maybe not just images, or in terms of like how people are interacting with it, maybe not just inside iMessage. And so I see it evolving in like in all different like kind of variations of like how people interact, and in different formats and form factors people interact with, while keeping everything like tighter. So the vision should still like stay same, but I see it evolving in like different forms, I believe.
This is awesome. I mean, Rajan, this has been kind of a whole new realm, I think, for James and I, kind of understanding the research side, both from academia, then kind of in Snap and your journey to Easel. For folks listening, where can they learn more about Easel? Where can they go download it? And where can they follow some of the research you've done?
Yeah, they can go to easelapps.ai to download it. It's EASELAPPS.ai. For my research, they can go to my website, rajanvaish.com. It's RAJANVAISH.com. I have documented all of my research because it's all public. So we have papers and videos from different conferences. A lot of my work from Snap is there as well, that they can check out.
I think in doing research for this show, I went through a lot of that. Didn't understand much of it, but a lot of it's there. I can attest to that.
Yeah, we tried to make videos, like 30-second videos, to kind of give a quick trailer into like what we were up to. Hopefully that was more helpful than reading like long papers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Rajan, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting. I really enjoyed like answering these questions, but like more importantly, I think conversations like these help me self-reflect as well, and allow me to actually like think about these questions. Like a lot of questions are self-reflective, and makes me think about things that you don't think on a normal day basis because you're so lost in like the details. So, like as part of my product designing process, I'm obsessed with product design these days. So it's good to like take a step back, see the big picture again, and go back to work.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And yeah, everyone should go to Easel. What's the website again?
Easelapps.ai.
We'll
And
put
EAS.
yeah,
we'll put that in the show notes. Make sure people have that as well as access to your website. And yeah,
Cool.
everyone should go download that.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Rajan.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.